Before I get started, I would like to thank you all for the support on the previous video as well as the shorts that we've made. I would appreciate it if you subscribed if you haven't already, and tell me in the comments what you would like to see next, as I would love to hear your suggestions. Now, onto the video. In recent years, the Pakistan cricket team is somehow managing to get even worse. And after Pakistan's abysmal performance in the Test series against Bangladesh, even those hardcore of Pakistani cricket fans seem to have given up on the team. We are tired of having to constantly have faith in our players only to have our hopes shattered. With the last year or so signifying a new low for the team, I would like to dig in and find out why this may be. We have the talent, we for once have the money, so where are we lacking? Join me as I take a dive into the iceberg, which is the Pakistan Cricket Board, and how we have managed to reach a lower low than ever before. If I were to cover the entirety of how politics has affected cricket in Pakistan, this video would be over 3 hours long. Instead, I'll highlight the main few points. While Pakistan and its government are in absolute turmoil, the many problems of the government have spilled over into the one thing Pakistanis would have hoped that could cheer them up in this awful period for the country. However, the constant problem is that with a change in power in the government, a complete makeover is done every single time to the Pakistan Cricket Board and its members. While I won't get into the specifics about these changes, I will say that this instability has been a huge factor in the team not being successful, as players and coaches haven't had any time to settle, and with a change in board comes a change in favorites. Changes in the selection committee and team management have not been stable in years. This is evidently shown by the fact that the selection committee has repeatedly given their favorites more chances than any other cricketers. And then they say that, quote unquote, they don't have a pool of players to turn to. I mean, how will you gain a pool of players to turn to if you don't give other players a chance? This instability is not a recent problem, as it's been going far before this sudden but inevitable downfall. We haven't had a set coach and team ever since the removal of Misbah-ul-Haq and Waqar Younis, which in itself was an awful choice to coach the squad as it took them backwards. More recently, we have seen a rift between the two pillars of the team, Shaheen Shah Afridi and Babz Sher, and while nothing has come out from this rumor to confirm such claims, it is quite obvious that the dynamic within the team has been fragile, with morale being at an all-time low. But in the end, the problem that remains is that it seems the players, coaches, and higher-ups focus more on politics rather than on cricket. Ever since the removal of Sarfraz Ahmed as captain, captaincy hasn't really been the same, and we have witnessed problems with captaincy across all three formats. When Sarfraz was removed from captaincy in 2019, Babz Sher was made captain in all three formats. However, the team was never the same. Babz was not able to utilize the team's strengths as well as Sarfraz did, and Sarfraz was able to transform a very weak team into a very aggressive and demanding team who wouldn't settle for average, which is something Babz Sher wasn't able to do. And Babz Sher's approach was more like the captains that came before Sarfraz, which was one of 1 step forward and 10 steps backwards. Likewise, Babz Sher didn't have much success as captain and would be heavily criticized for this. Because of the constant pressures and stress, Babz Sher's form started to decline as well, and instead of getting better, he got worse in both aspects of his career. After the awful campaign of the 2023 ODI World Cup, Shaheen Shah Afridi took over the duties from Babz Sher as captain of the team for T20s. This change received mixed reactions, as although Shaheen had success as captain in domestic and leagues, most notably the PSL, people were skeptical of Shaheen's capabilities as he still has much to learn. Furthermore, Shaheen's inexperience and ever rampant false news and drama caused by Pakistani news outlets did nothing to help. This appointment was filled by too much drama, as false quotes were spread about Shaheen's disdain for Babur's return to his position as captain, and this further helped cause a rumored rift in the Pakistan squad. The PCB needs to realize that league cricket and international cricket are two very different things, and just because a player does well in league cricket does not mean that they will do well in international cricket. If we shift over to Test cricket, Shan Masood was appointed as captain, and although he's still early in his captaincy, he isn't showing much promise. He hasn't utilized the team well and has managed to take the team to their first loss against Bangladesh in tests. While losing to Bangladesh for the first time in history at home was bad enough, the absolutely disgraceful and shameful way we lost is the most absurd and baffling part. What's even more shameful is that we declared in the first innings of the first match as if we were in some sort of winning position. We decided to play 4 mainstreamers on a pitch that had no sort of assistance for them. And we weren't even able to correctly judge a pitch that we made. Imagine making a pizza and serving it to your family believing it's a burger. It's just so crazy that we would even do such a thing. On top of that, we have completely destroyed any chance that we had for qualifying to the World Test Championship final, as we had no hindsight to see that playing 4 seamers would lead to a slow overrate, and this led to points being deducted, which were points we didn't have much to spare in the first place. It's actually hilarious. But it is important to note that both the coaches and captain should be held accountable for this humiliating loss. If we shift to ODIs now, Babz was kept as the ODI captain and eventually made the T20 captain again. However, this would only cause more turmoil, as shown by performances during the T20 World Cup earlier this year and the embarrassing loss to the US and India. Although there are many problems with Pakistan's captains, it must be said that blaming only the captain for the entire team's performance is unjust and unfair. The players, the staff, and the coaches are equally at fault. Beating Bangladesh would have merely served to conceal the cracks that have been forming ever since this downfall began. Even if Pakistan managed to tie up the series, this would only have covered a few of the cracks, but I think the main problem is that we fans are getting fed up with these cheap pleasures to satisfy our thirst for winning. It seems at this point it's just a ploy to control outside noise, but it only makes the noises louder. The team has been too willing to position itself as the most entertaining and least predictable group of players. At this point, Nasser Hussain's immortal statement that Pakistan cricket is best played 1 minute up and next minute down might as well serve as Pakistan's motto. But in all fairness, Pakistan doesn't even play interesting cricket, which is in contrast to its contemporaries. Most teams have decided to change and evolve with the time as average scores rise and more attacking cricket grows. But Pakistan, on the other hand, is at a standstill, whether this is due to a lack of interest to change or stubbornness. I personally attribute it to a complete and utter lack of awareness. A prime example of this is the T20 World Cup match against India. We only needed a run a ball, but we let so much pressure get to our head and we made it look like we were playing a test match for some reason. In the past, we were at least able to make up for our poor batting and low scores with our bowling. Pakistan was known as the land of pacers, and in the past we provided a spark of hope with our pace bowling attack. Despite numerous advantages like improved batting conditions, rules favoring batsmen, and 2 new balls in ODIs, and even smaller boundaries, our batting performance was still lackluster across the board. However, now even our bowling is disappointing and has fallen off. While it's understandable that conditions have changed and are not in favor of the bowlers as much, other teams are still doing a far better job than us, so what's our excuse? All this being said, the biggest problem in our team is fielding. Somehow, our fielding has gotten even worse over the years, and this is evidently shown as we seem to put more importance in our batting and bowling rather than fielding. While many other countries show their gun fielding, we are being known as the side with the worst fielding. All that being said, I blame this on management and lack of awareness and accountability, which is something that I will expand on later. The constant hate from not only our own country's fans, but also former players is absolutely ridiculous. Although it is understandable to be unhappy and fuming considering the way that this team has played over the last few years, the way that people have gone about expressing their feelings is absolutely terrible. At the end of the day, the players are humans and should not be abused and berated for losing a game. The media needs to realize that they are not the ones partaking in a game and have no right to indulge in spreading hate towards Pakistani cricketers and their families. As fans, we do have the right to criticize the team, but the way we do it is way too much. What's worse than the fickle and hypocritical fans are the downright awful ex-Pakistani cricketers who try to find any outlet to bash the current team, with little to no support offered. While ex-players from other countries would back their team during a time of turmoil, our players seem to find enjoyment in it as they can use the good old hindsight card. They play the typical, back when I used to play, we used to do this, we used to do that. When in reality, this Pakistan side just 2 years ago was far more successful than any of the early 2010 Pakistan squads that constantly comes out and uses the I could play better card. Players like Ahmed Shahzad, Mohammad Amir and Imad Wasim have absolutely no right to criticize the current team and call art conspiracies when they dug their own graves. These players act like they are the best in the world, and if they were a part of the team during the match, then they would take the team to a victory, which in reality most likely isn't the case. These players' lack of character has been shown in the past few years. However, they still have their supporters. Using this rough patch in the team, they've given fans hope that they're the messiah and the solution to all their problems. However, we've seen that this isn't true at all. When Mohammad and Amir and Imad Wasim, in the two most crucial games of the T20 World Cup, lost us the games that were within our grasp. Don't forget that Amir was the one who bowled the horrible super over against US, directly causing our loss. Guess where the blame went? It's an easy answer. Our captain! The media and the fans need to stop manipulating the situation and keep their extreme feelings to themselves, as this does nothing but put more pressure on the team. At the end of the day, the Pakistan cricket team isn't a one-man team. It's an 11-man team, and that's not even acknowledging the coaches and the staff. Once our country and our players realize that this is not an individual effort but a team effort, things may finally start to improve. Our nation makes it seem that if Babr Azam doesn't do well, then the team will lose the match. What about the other batsmen? Are they just supposed to go under the radar? All the accountability is being placed on Babr, and he's being criticized more than any other player for their loss. All this being said, I admit I do have a bias towards Babr Azam, as he's one of my favorite players, but the way he is being attacked is way too extreme. At least in Sarfraz's time as captain, there was some unity in the team and every player pulled their own weight. However, since then the unity has vanished more and more. Every player seems to beat around the bush when asked a question that pertains to accountability. Take Shan Masood for example. Instead of saying that it was his fault for not utilizing the team well as he should have, he kind of beats around the bush and just apologizes for everyone in general. Even the management and selection committee need to step up and say that they did not assess the pitch correctly and should have selected a spinner in the team. All in all, every time someone makes a mistake in the Pakistan Cricket Board, they need to own up to it. To say the Pakistan team doesn't play enough cricket is an understatement. While other teams play cricket series back to back, we wait a month or two between series. I mean, there's nothing wrong with taking a break from cricket, but the amount of time the Pakistan team spends away from international cricket is simply not needed. Aside from this, a problem is that our main players play in every single series. However, we can easily solve this issue by taking a page from the Indian cricket team and benching our main players and playing new talents. This would also broaden the amount of players that our selection committee can select from. It is hard to say which format the Pakistan team struggles with the most, as they are pretty dreadful in every single format. But if we look at the number of matches we play, the format we play the least amount of matches from is Test cricket. The last time we played a Test match before the Bangladesh series was back in January. This exemplifies the larger issue in Pakistan cricket, where we prioritize ODIs and T20s over Test cricket. What is even more saddening is that our own players seem to prioritize leagues over international cricket. If the Pakistan team wants to become a top tier cricket team, then we need to play more matches to add experience to our players. Going back to the statement following the loss to Bangladesh, PCB chairman Mohsin Naqvi attributed the defeat to the fact that the selection committee has no pool of high quality replacement players to turn to. Aside from being another instance of lack of accountability, this is an issue that can easily be addressed. We shouldn't have to wait till a domestic player does something outstanding in both PSL and domestic leagues until they have a chance to be considered to play in the international team. Instead, if a player has a somewhat promising performance, then they should be given a chance in the international team. Albeit, they should most likely be tried against the weaker teams first. The PCB is so rigid in its selection committee that even if a player is doing really well, like Abrar Ahmed, there's a good chance they won't be selected until there is constant backlash from the media. Although we have a reasonable amount of backup pacers and batsmen, we lack backup spinners. This means that if our main spinner is injured, then we'll most likely be doomed more than we already are. In contrast to this, almost all the other major teams in the world have multiple well-established spinners that could be backups. Instead of complaining about the limited number of players to choose from, the Pakistan cricket team needs to broaden its player pool. With the amount of holes beginning to make themselves apparent, the Pakistan cricket team was bound to have its downfall. Cricket is a sport full of unpredictability and upsets. And maybe Pakistan's test loss to Bangladesh was just another example of this typical downturn. Heck, maybe Pakistan's loss to Afghanistan in the 2023 World Cup might have been another example of an upset. Just like England being knocked out of the tournament. But it gets to a point where it's not just an upset. It's the fall from grace of a once half-decent cricketing side. This is shown through the T20 World Cup and the losses that Pakistan had against India and the United States. You could say that those were close matches, but they shouldn't have been. There have been too many instances where Pakistan is in a dominant position but somehow manages to mess it up. Pakistan has completely forgotten what it takes to win a match, especially in Test cricket, which is the cornerstone of any professional cricket team. The team's losing streak on their home territory now stands at 9 tests, spanning a whopping 3.5 years, following the test loss to Bangladesh. Your home ground is supposed to be where your cricket team shows the most dominance. But the Pakistan cricket team does everything but that. They appear to be unaware of which players to play in order to make the most of the surface that is already theirs, and they're unable to properly prepare a pitch to their own benefit. With morale at an absolute low, not just in the team but with the fans, it's only telling how much longer this current team survives. As fans, all we can do now is continue doing what we have been doing for a while, hoping that things get better.